And we are back, part 3, Groupcast. First ever, Jahmil Effend, Adam Gaffen, Steve R. Gans. Now, right before we cut off, I was Steve was actually really interrupted. I was about to mix that up. And Steve, what are we talking about?
If you don't interrupt me, you'll never get a word in. I can do this all day long. At my age, it's about all I can do is talk anymore. No, you were talking about technology making things easier for us. Um, I worked in prisons for 25 years, and I can't think of an exception to this, honestly. So it's not an exaggeration. Anytime a 20, 25-year-old guy got into a fight with a 55, 60-year-old guy, didn't really matter how fit either one was. The young guy might be out on the yard running, working out all day long, didn't matter. The young guy never won that fight. And I think it's because 50 years ago, if you were growing up in the bad part of Chicago, you learned how to duke. Guys grew up fighting. They might have lost every fight they ever had, but they had lots of them. Young guys growing up 10, 20 years ago in the streets of Chicago learned how to pull a trigger. They didn't learn how to fight. They just shot at each other. So you put them in a fist fight, you think youth and strength and energy are going to take on the old guy. No, old guys won every time, because their life was harder in that way. So I think that kind of serves to highlight your point that it's not necessarily a good thing that technology makes things easier for us. Or lessens our pain or discomfort. Like seeing the faces of dead loved ones. And, I'm, like I say, I went and looked at some historical figures, and I wouldn't begrudge anybody, seeing an animated video of their loved one, as long as they remember and keep in mind that's what it is. It's a trick of technology. That person's obviously still gone, and there's no way to bring them back. But as the technology progresses, that line's gonna keep blurring. I guess my point is that we do need our pain, much as we don't like it, and we shouldn't necessarily be happy about it all being taken away.
And I'm going to add to that a couple things. First, there's a quote from Heinlein. Go figure. Heinlein is my favorite author.
Oh God, he's so good.
And don't handicap your children by making their lives easy for them.
Yes.
Yeah. So that goes back to what you're saying. And the other thing about that My Heritage site, I've used it actually to animate a couple pictures of my characters. So
That's
it's a
cool.
tool. It's a tool to be used.
Yeah.
It's all in how you use it. And that applies to any technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're all tools to be used, and any tool can be used incorrectly. Any tool can be used.
TNT.
Yeah, any tool can be used to a bad end. So.
Oh yeah.
It's just remembering how to use it correctly. That's the trick.
Yeah, and remember what it is and what it isn't.
Yep.
I guess that's the crux of sci-fi, right? It's kind of taking it's my favorite part of sci-fi. It's basically like my main inspiration of writing. It's kind of like the Black Mirror concept of like, all right, look at this awesome technology. Look how awesome it is. Look how badly humans corrupt it. And it's always that type of, like, I've said it a couple times, when they were sitting around inventing the iPhone, when they were sitting around inventing the laptop, they did not think about Twitter. They were not thinking about Instagram. That was something that was completely, I mean, like I really believe that they were sitting around talking about like, yo, man, we can put all the scientists in the world together. Oh my God, people can like learn online. They don't even have to, they thought of like technology advancing in that way. Like, oh, like kids are going to be even smarter. Like the average IQ is going to be like 150 now because like there's going to be access to information at all times. But then what do we use the information for? What do we use that processing power for?
Cat pictures.
Exactly. And the thing is that I can't even, you can't get mad at that. I could, if we were to be talking when I was in my 20s in Boston, shout out to Jahmil A. But I would definitely be like, bitching, talking to, the Stan from South Park point of view, oh, everything is shit, everybody's dumb. but like in reality, they really aren't. Like you really can't get mad at people for liking cat pictures. I mean, like you know, or just like doing whatever they're doing in life. I don't know. I guess again, it's everything is the duality and just like how things can be viewed and to the point of Adam, it's how technology is used rather than how it's invented or what it's incepted to be.
Yeah, people are going to be people. You know, we're all half a chromosome away from being chimpanzees, and we all know people who seem closer than that.
By the way, High Council series. I still have that little the bookmark
Yes.
from the that's Jamal's thing. He just recently just dropped it, so I just want to drop like a quick shout out, and then obviously the Cassidy Chronicles and Israfel's Rising and Fallen for Steve R. Gans. But the reason I kind of wanted to bring that up was the whole fantasy aspect of it. Now we were about to get into that, but then we kind of like switched off into the morality conversation. Well worth it. But I kind of want to cycle back into fantasy and propose the question. And you did bring it up a little bit with Game of Thrones, but to you, kind of in the same light of the thriller question and the horror question, to you, what is the definition of fantasy? What is the Mount Rushmore, like, oh my god, if I can get to that level, I'll die happily?
For me, honestly, it is like Game of Thrones. It's getting to Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. It's making these large epics that span over multiple universes that can hold weight in many areas, and ask bigger questions. I think like Brandon Sanderson, for instance, he does a really good job at creating characters that have very dark, uh, very dark realities. Like Kaladin is one of the saddest characters or saddest protagonists you could ever read, and it's because he's dealing with depression throughout the entire story. But it's never outright said depression. But but you know it because he's so sad, and so much of his life can never be enough. And I think that being able to write those characters, being able to write a Jon Snow who never feels welcomed in his own home, who has trouble with identity. That's a real concept for so many people. So many people feel like they don't know who they are. And the fantasy aspect, the fun part about fantasy is being able to include magic systems or being able to include religion and tie those aspects in a way that gives you heed and gives you questions to ask yourself about the greater society we live in. Um, there's never a time where I've watched or read Game of Thrones and felt like it wasn't having some sort of commentary on humanity and what we as people would do for power, or just status and place in society. And that's the stuff that I aspire to continue to try to write is what happens when you want power. One of the characters in my story wanted power so badly that they did something that haunts them. And throughout the book, you start to read and learn more about what that was. And for me, it's been one of the most fun parts of the entire storytelling process because I didn't even plot that out to begin with. It just came. It was just a part of the character because he needed to be more than just the hero because I can't just write a hero. I was like, I'm not just a hero in my own story. I've done bad things. I've done stupid things. I've made mistakes, not on the level that he has, but that's the fun of fantasy, being able to, and that's the fun of writing, being able to just exaggerate the chaos and let those characters deal with the differences. And one of the things for me, I got my master's in counseling. So I look at the psychology of characters. I look at the psychology of a broken home and what that can do to someone and what those relationships can do to people. And I think that's a piece where I like to explore how those characters kind of interact with the world from that lens, from that broken home, from that broken family, from those hurt relationships, and giving the reader some leeway to try to include themselves, and let them say, like, yeah, that makes sense for what this character has dealt with and gone through for them to reach this point. This breaking point makes sense to me. And I would probably reach that breaking point too if I was in that same situation. And I think as authors, that's always the thing you aim for, like getting your reader on board with the story you're trying to tell.
I think one of my biggest takeaways from Game of Thrones, like one of the things that I critique, well, not critique it in the way that I'm like making fun of it, but I think critically of it and always reference it in my like inspiration for future writing, was the way that, and again, I'm not saying that he invented it, but it was the first time that I saw it in a way that really blew my mind. But is that he kind of took the regular scope of a story and seemed to zoom it out a little bit, right? Because if you really think about it, it was always Jon Snow and Daenerys from the beginning. Like if you kind of like understand like the writing, it's like, oh wait a minute, yeah, this was always his plan. These were always going to be the two. But he threw, instead of like starting it from that point and starting it from Jon Snow's campaign, he's just zoomed out a little bit and just built like immersed you in the world a little bit. You got to know his dad. His dad dies. You get to see what happens to his family. You know, even when he was at Winterfell and he was at basically the high, like almost the highest nobility he was throughout the entire story. Because even when he was in the King of the North, it was not a king of the North of the whole. It was just the King of the North. When they were Winterfell, he still nobility for the entire Westeros, right? So in the beginning, it starts off with him at the highest of nobility that he has, and even then, he feels, as you said, estranged from his people, and he feels like the black sheep of the family, and that's why he has the awesome black sheep hair, right? Uh, so it just, that kind of idea boils up, and then you have like the typical people that like just, oh, I can't say typical people, but because the way that we're told to, like the way that we've been programmed to write stories, that every point of view that you read is of the utmost importance, and it's going to have like a meaningful effect. So when you have Ned Stark dying season one, you're like, wait a minute, you know what I mean? That's when Game of Thrones really became like a cult thing afterwards, is because people had the idea of like, oh wait a minute, they're just killing off main characters now. Sean Bean, you know what I mean? He, like, you know, like an actual actor, they're just knocking him off and continuing with other people, and then all the people that that they spend so much time into focusing on, and you really think Rob Baratheon's brother is going to get far, but then, you know, and it's just all these little aspects that it's just perfectly woven together. And to me, I think that's what fantasy is. It's not just the setting, but it's like really having an interesting idea to like put like a new scope in like a common trope, I suppose. And to
Yeah.
me, that's what George did to unreal levels.
Yeah, it's crazy because like Ned Stark, the character that seems like the main character of all the story, dies in book one.
Yeah.
So it's like he doesn't even make it to the rest of the books, but he's supposed to be this huge person. And I think his ability to echo that character throughout the rest of his novels also gave me that feeling of like permanence to the death. Like this character dies and Rob Stark dies later in another book, and you're like, this is something that never goes away, that their deaths matter so much. And I think like any character death in general has to mean something to the story, has to mean something to the plot. And he did a really good job, at least for me, at making those character deaths matter to an extent that I never felt like the story was the same after they were gone. And that was pretty much every character that he has killed in his book. It's every time they're gone, I feel like so much has changed. And I think the other characters lose pieces of themselves. They become less when those other characters die. And that kind of happens with us in real life. And he also explores like those people being able to build themselves back up, which is something else that we have to do in real life. After someone's gone, we have to figure out a way to continue and move forward and continue to grow and aspire for things. And so do the characters in that book. So for me, that's always been something I've enjoyed. It's just being able to watch the stories evolve and making sure everything's intentional and everything matters, is I think what you were just touching on.
Without a single doubt. Just, I mean, Game of Thrones, specifically the Red Wedding, you know, talk about before and after, just like tone. I can tell you, especially with our generation, I feel like it's actually what Adam was saying, that like kind of there was the torture porn back in the day. So I grew up with Saw and like all these like grotesque, like extreme levels of like things. So like I feel my generation is particularly um desensitized to violence. I mean, I can't tell you, I guess it's like a little like morbid. I can't tell you how many times I'll watch like public freak out videos on YouTube or on I mean on Reddit, and I'll be scrolling through and there'll be a video of a person legit dying. Of like, they get hit by a car. It's like, and I'm just like, oh wait a minute, how am I okay with this? I just saw a person like lose life. That's insane. Or like you'll see like a person just get like a really hit, like a bag hit. It's like, ooh, and you're like laughing, and you read the comments like, oh, by the way, that person died. Is like a link to the article, and you're like, oh my god. It's something that we see so often that it takes a lot for us to kind of get jolted. And I can tell you that the Red Wedding, the first time I saw it, I remember I was obviously I had like the feeling of like edge of my seat, and then the screen went black because the episode was ended, and I just stared at the screen for a good 10 minutes in shock of what I just saw. I mean, they just stabbed a pregnant woman in the stomach on TV. On TV, it was the craziest thing I ever saw. The craziest thing, and not even just from what's the word like shock value, but just from the length of a storyline. It was the whole thing at the beginning of the episode. They shared bread and salt, which is supposed to be a thing of like, nah, we're homies now, not just friends. We're like homies now. We're homies. That's like it was an agreed upon tradition. And again, there's the whole fantasy aspect. There's the religion aspect. It's like a customs and tradition and norms that we all agree upon and we all follow it. Then you have this dude that's like, nah, well, I'm just gonna go with the red side actually. Swap, 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 swap. Everybody dies, and just like that shift change, it was literally at a wedding. Everybody's married, blah blah blah, and the only person that it feels a little weird is the mom. She's like, I don't feel something's wrong, and Rob's like, calm down, bitch. You know what I mean? Everybody's chilling. Get something to drink in your system. You know what I mean? We'll be alright. And then, the music starts shifting up a little bit, ding ding dang dang dang, and like you visibly start feeling like something bad's about to happen, and then it just goes haywire.
Yeah, that scene was like that scene just iconic. It's just one of those moments for me that just tells you that's storytelling, right? Like that's what you want. You want to be able to shock people, but it also wasn't a shock because it was something that could happen. It all made sense. It all added up. And I think a lot of people that I've noticed within writing a lot of other books, because I read a lot of self-published books because that's just the crowd I'm in. And sometimes I'll tell people, especially if I beta read for them, that they have to do some more setup early on in the process. I'm like, don't make things shocking for the sense of just being shocking. Make it shocking because it was possible. It was an option that was on the table. And then it happened. And I think that works way more than if someone never could have seen something coming.
Definitely. I think that goes with something hand in hand with something that Steve and I talked about Sherlock, the TV show, and Sherlock, the book series, where the book series of Sherlock breaks it down in a sense that you can solve the mystery along with Sherlock. So that when it comes to the end, it's like, boom, I was right, or I was wrong, or, some little turnaround. Whereas a TV show, it's just like, you just get data. And then it ends with Sherlock being like, oh, well, let me tell you how this worked. And it's like, it just like condescendingly, just like exposition dump of like, it makes you as the audience almost feel stupid. It's like, oh, sorry, I don't have like an IQ of 325. My bad. And honestly, you see that in like anime too. It's something that I definitely agree upon. Like the whole idea of setting and, well, again, I guess it's not something that you can really kind of like hate on people for because it's, you're trying to get like a rise, but it needs to be grounded in reality for sure.
I'm actually going to disagree with you, AR, regarding yeah, I know, regarding the original, Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes stories. At the end of the stories, he always, he'd solve it, and then it would be, a page or a half a page or however long it took of him telling Watson, standing in for the reader, well, obviously this was this, and this was this, and this was that, and how did you miss this? It's so obvious. It was the books were, and the stories were very condescending at the end. So the TV show stuck to that. It was actually true to the source material in that it was true to the tone.
That's interesting. So basically, what that means is that the what I'm referencing as a source material was actually just the fake copy, the Imposter King. Now that's interesting.
If you go back and read, the stuff from 150 years ago that Conan Doyle wrote, um, at the end of every story, he explains it. He sets it out, and there is very much the how did you, he's talking to Watson and he's saying, how did you miss this? How did you not see that? And it starts off that way too. Each story, Watson will come in and they'll be talking, and Holmes will say, oh, here comes the German consul to talk to me about such and such. And Watson will go, well, how do you know that? Well, and he'll explain it, based on having seen this particular mud on his shoe. So again, from the beginning, he's setting it up. Sherlock is this, this mind without parallel, and then he reinforces it at the end.
Yeah, now that is really interesting. It kind of brings up the character of, the concept of revamp versus original source material. Like, there's a lot of people that man, I can't remember, but all right, just I guess the most similar version. Any 10 or 12-year-old right now, their Bill and Ted is Bill and Ted 3. Know what I mean? For kids, their Full House is that whatever Netflix shit that they have on. And if you were to have a debate on them, their version of it is more tuned to their generation, their society. So if you were to have a debate on them on which one is better, they're gonna probably say the former or the latter, or XYZ. For example, and this is gonna get me a lot of hate, but Star Trek. I didn't grow up with the younger Star Trek generation. My Star Trek is the Chris Pine stuff, and I love that stuff. And when I have a conversation with people that are huge Trekkies, they'll go at me from 1,000 different directions that this was an imposter, that the original were XYZ better, and I have no disagreeing with you, but for whatever reason I vibe more with their alteration of it, the same way that I guess I vibe more with the imposter idea of Sherlock Holmes rather than the reality of what his source material was.
Right. And the only reason
It's not your fault.
Oh no,
definitely
it's not anybody's any fault. I think it's really interesting, honestly.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm into it that much is I've written a couple of little Sherlock Holmes stories, and but yeah, you have to really read the source material closely to get the feel for it, because his language is very specific. The way he wrote it is, I've never seen anything which has the same feel and has the same flavor. So you have to go back and read it if you want to write in it.
Huh.
It's like learning a language.
Yeah. You can see Poe's influence on Doyle in that way. If you look at Murders of the Rue Morgue, the first detective story, and Doyle admitted as much, that Sherlock Holmes is a lot like Poe's detective, and you're going to borrow from the best.
Detective Dupont.
But yeah, your point about Star Trek is right. It's like asking people who their favorite James Bond is. Well,
Yes.
Depends on which generation of person you're
example.
talking to. I can't dig the new I love the cast of the new Star Trek films. I think they did a great job with what they were given, but I couldn't get into this alternate Star Trek world they were building. It's not what I came out with. I also have this principle that I have yet to be disproven on, and that's the belief. Sorry, I know that's an unpopular Star Trek. Star Wars. Yeah, no, don't like any of it. But I'm a grumpy old man, so my opinion doesn't matter.
Well, that's why it's funny that this is recorded, right? Because I'm over here defending it, then we're gonna flash forward to 40 years, and then I'm gonna talk about like, nah, the Star Wars nowadays is crap. Let me tell you, back in my day when they had the Last Jedi, now that's Star Wars. And you know, it's gonna it's the I actually believe that both Adam and Steve said this somewhere in the first episode. It's just
just warning.
yeah, it's that idea that just it's always gonna be like that generational gap where this generation is saying like, ah, nah, you know, right now like older people are looking at it like oh, the iPhone's gonna be the death of life, and the new kids are like iPhones are the reason for life, and then it's gonna go upon, and they're gonna get older, they're gonna be like, all right, listen, iPhones were cool, but VR is too much, and their kids are gonna be like, nah, iPhones are shit, VR is where it's at, and it's gonna keep on going further until you know, and the funniest part about it, and it goes to kind of your morality thing, and it's something that I'm kind of dealing with now as in I'm going through my edits and like writing Iris of Mercy, is that I like the idea of moral characters where even the characters themselves aren't really sure on what side they align on. You know what I mean? And just how the lengths that they will go for their own beliefs. I know I talked to Steve about it. My character almost has a self-religion where he was incepted with this idea at a young age that he was going to be the man, that he was going to do XYZ, and he let the idea fester for so long in his head that it basically stopped any further growth. When people like, you know, try to induct him and try to like, you know, try to give him some type of advice or like some type of like thing to kind of help him grow in a more healthy way, there was a wall he always hit because in his head he was the man. Like, it doesn't matter what I have to hear from you. I'm the man. I kill the monster at the end of the story. I get the bitch. This is already told. I got, you know, a cactus told me this when I was 12. This is foretold. I don't have to worry about anything. So I like the idea that that like your own belief system can corrupt your ideology so far to the point that you wake up one day and you're just like, oh, wait a minute, we did this? Jesus Christ.
Well, every time, I mean, this is a truism, and it's not just in writing, but every time you push a boundary to a new extreme, then eventually that becomes the new norm, and you have to push even further to get to another extreme.
Mm.
And then if that persists, then that eventually becomes the new norm. So the more you push, the more you the more you expand outwards, the uh, the more potentially devastating the results.
I'll be honest, I have a very dirty mind. I immediately thought of like naked pictures. If you take like Playboys from like the 1950s, 60s and compare it to the pictures that girls are taking now, I don't know how much more naked you could get in 10 years. Know what I mean? I really don't. Like how much
Compare it to the TV commercials.
I'm telling you, it's
Forget that.
unreal. It's unreal. The things that girls are doing nowadays, I mean, pretzels and just insane things. Like how much further can you go from here? But you know they're gonna find a way. It's just insane. It's just
That's the
insane.
question with sex and violence and taboos. You know, there's only like horror films. If you look at the slasher films of the 80s that were getting heavily censored at the time, they're nothing compared to what a commercial for The Walking Dead shows you, much less the episode. You know, and I'm anti-censorship, and I'm not by any means, but it presents a problem for the creative person because once it becomes permissible to show or say anything, and that's the logical terminus of what Adam was talking about, you know, it's all going to become more graphic and more explicit and more extreme. Only so many ways or make love to another human being. When all that's done and anything can be shown to anybody and that's the norm, how do you tell stories? How do you surprise people? Is it possible to shock people anymore? It presents a problem for the creative artist, whether you're trying to create a picture that turns people or something that scares the pants off them. You know, what do you do? It's a challenge. So luckily we're not there yet. And luckily it's easier nowadays to offend anybody than ever before. So we've still got that going for us.
It's like touching your elbow. Bing, one hate group. Bing, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. Well, I
Uh,
mean, you know, as somebody creative, we have to depend more on misdirection,
hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and showing
Oh,
them
yeah.
something that
Watch,
they think
you know, watch
they
an
see.
episode. Yeah. Yeah. It's going to come down to what have you got in your bag of tricks that no one has used in a while
Mm-hmm.
that you can surprise on the next generation.
It kind of
You know,
brings up the question of like
that's
how,
it.
like the how far like I guess the morality of the society. I can tell you that I didn't know what the word sex meant until I was like 13 or like 12. And I didn't know what semen was until like a year after that. Like I was 100% certain the only thing that came out of your penis was pee. Like why would anything else come out? That's insane. And just to consider now what the level kids must be at. I mean, Jesus. You know, it's because it's right there.
Yeah.
Oh, you think of that 18 plus button? Oh, are you sure you're 18? You think that's doing anything? That's bringing people to the site. Like, I don't know.
Exactly.
And I know like how much of a grandpa I sound,
But censorship,
like, it does seem a little weird though.
it is. And again, I'm anti-censorship. I don't believe in the idea that, you know, showing this to people will make them want to go out. You know, if you explain to someone what syphilis is, they're going to want to go out and get it, you know. But it does, you know, it's information. Do with it what you will. But it does present the question of morality, you know, when toddlers know what porn is, you know, and the best way to dismember someone, it's a tough question as a society, but it's rich material to write about too.
Yeah, I think Adam said
So
something that I think was like
that.
super powerful. It's like when you're thinking about misdirecting your audience, you really have to you have to really set up so much as a creative person now, because everyone's seen everything. Everyone's heard all the stories. So now you have to be overly creative in the way you present something or what you hide and what you conceal. The switch of hand now is so much more.
Yeah, Mr. Robot. I think it's a great show of that.
I went through all that.
Yes. No, continue. I was just agreeing with you. Oh, he might have cut off.
No, I was just going to say I went through all that with the book I just finished, Mouse Game. You learn early on who the killer is, and it's a question of will the cops get him and how will they. The second book is a murder mystery. And the murder mystery is a whole different ball of wax. You've got to build the whole book around the big reveal of who the killer is and why they did it. And if you've got to hide someone in plain sight, and there's only so many ways to do that and only so many motives for killing someone. And the readers who read these kind of books have seen them all a million times. So how do you pull that off? You know, how do you don't want them figuring out at page 10 who the killer is, because then the big reveal is nothing. You've ruined it. They already know. And you can't have it be someone so out of the picture of the story where you go, okay, the killer is Joey. And they go, it can't be Joey. That's stupid. And they don't buy it, and your novel falls on its ass. It's got to be like, oh, wow, it's them. Oh, you know what? Yeah, you know, now that I think about it, it makes sense. It's what you want from the reader. And I thought the whole novel revolves around this. A cat and mouse game, if it doesn't work, you can tweak it. It's like a souffle. It's either going to be perfect or it's going to fall and be a complete waste of time. And that was my big fear. That was so much harder to write that book. And I don't think I'm going to put myself through another whodunit again. I think because it was torture. and
Preach.
I hope I pulled it off.
Preach.
Find out.
I definitely
Yeah,
I
tough.
I definitely sympathize with like just like writing just Allegory of the End. I feel like so much of its structure is based off the previous tier. Know what I mean? Like it's just like on like stilts on stilts on stilts. That if it works out, oof, it works out. But if any of those stilts are off by like 45 degrees, I'm screwed. And like it's just gonna all come down on itself. I'm happy with the result. Don't get me wrong. Extremely proud of it. But I just don't think I'll ever do something like that again. You know, just even simple tweaks of like the plot. If I move one little Jenga block, the amount of ricochets it's gonna do to the plot line, like like sideways and leftways, it's unreal. I want to definitely streamline an idea a little bit more, so like to the point that I can just it's a little more malleable towards the end. Because what I ended up with Allegory of the End 1 and 2 and Iris of Mercy is just that this huge like tapestry that one little thread is gonna make the entire thing look like a it's gonna be like the person that Reed did the picture of Jesus Christ. I'm talking about. It made it look like even worse. It's gonna be just like that.
And I was just gonna put out there as well, with the whole misdirection thing. Another way to do misdirection is show them exactly what you're doing and let them try to figure out what it is that you're doing, but you just have it right out there. My antagonist in my Cassidy Chronicles books, you're introduced to her. She's throwing somebody out an airlock. She tells you who she is right from the beginning, and she stays consistent to that all the way through. So the reader, I'm hoping is going, well, no, there has to be something good to this person. There has to be, what else is going on here? No, I'm showing you exactly what's going on. I'm just letting your own mind, fill in blanks that aren't actually there.
Now we are approaching the end of
Sorry.
oh, no problem at all, because we're approaching the end of it anyway. I want to
Didn't
do
even know I had it on.
I definitely want to finish off with a nice little promo for everybody's stuff. High Council series out now, Amazon, and inspired by Jahmil.com. Am I right? Yep. So make sure to pick that up. Cassidy Chronicles. How many books were there?
3, and book 4 comes out next month.
You heard it there from the mouth of the horse. I don't know why that expression exists or how it came to be, but whatever. Get it on Amazon and CassidyChronicles.com. You already know where to do it. Heavily recommend it. Sci-fi. Then we have Steve. Israfel's Rising, Israfel's Fallen, and The 6 Legs of the Devil. Coming soon. SteveVargans.com, Amazon, Kindle. I'm telling you, all the people here. 8 legs. Oh my Jesus. There comes the truck right now to beat the crap out of me. Right. Don't worry, I'll get the licks. Don't worry, I'll get the licks. And again, I am over the moon. Right. Thank you so much for that. This was an awesome first group cast. There were a couple things I actually really. And we are back. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that today, but we're going to keep on trying. Got caught off during the outro. I'm telling you, talk about a tease. I was just going into everybody's great works. We have Adam Gaffen, the Cassidy Chronicles, and he actually just, as we were talking about, that has some news to share. Adam.
Yeah, so the Cassidy Chronicles Volume 1, the first book in the series, has been shortlisted for the 2021 Drunken Druid Literary Awards. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very excited.
Done.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So if everything you've heard so far in the podcast wasn't enough of a sale, and it should be, like, what else do you want? You know what I mean? Have some respect.
Yeah, really.
And it just got shortlisted, and I'm telling you, that is the exact opposite of anything you don't want to be. I don't know where I got that from. What am I talking about? I recommend the book. Couldn't recommend the book enough. CassidyChronicles.com. Yeah, I don't even know what. I was about to say something, realized I was like, you know what? Volume 1, 2, and 3 out now. 4 coming out soon. We have Jahmil oh my God, Jahmil Effend with the High Council series, and that is also a two-parter, correct?
Three-parter. War in the Fallows is out right now.
Parter.
The audiobook will be dropping anytime in April, so be on the lookout. It's already been submitted, so they'll email me when they want to post it. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
And then book two is getting finished right now, so we're working on book two. The outline's been crafted. First chapters are done.
And then we have
Fantastic.
Steve. Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic on that. And on top of that, just your story was one that really stuck with me. I mean, just like the whole thing with the imposter kings, you know what I mean? Just stuck with me for the longest amount of time. The idea of religions that you were talking about, and even one thing that always stood by me was how people view religion through the landscape. They were saying that there's certain people, that a certain village, that like the way that they have a view of a certain mountain, it looks like the face of a person. There's certain people that like are more religious than another because of that. They're like geographical location. Just it's exactly what you're talking about with the whole counseling thing, is that like the heart of fantasy and sci-fi, like the emotional thread isn't just the awesome lore and background behind it, but it's like the emotional connection and then like having a real societal impact and a real fictional society within your book. And I think all the elements that you talked about speak highly of it. So again, the High Council series, I could not recommend it enough for high fantasy. And I mean, I'm telling you, I literally have the little thing for it right here. Like, how much more proof? Literally, I can't even find it. I've been playing around the entire podcast, so it's right here. Right here, High Council series with a nice little thing.
Very cool.
And then Steve R. Gams, my second person on this podcast, that's a treasured friend of this podcast. Israfel's Rising, Israfel's Fallen, the 8 legs of the devil, so we can call off the Hitman crew. And then
yeah, we're working on that one now.
Yeah, and honestly, every single time this man on the podcast, like you can just quote you can quote this man endlessly. Just like the things that he always blows me away with, like his little insights and everything. Again, this whole podcast has been an absolute treasure. It's almost annoying because there were 2 things I want to get to with which was the whole thing about, especially with us, it was like men writing female characters. I think that would have been an awesome conversation between us. And then
next time.
Yeah, and then also building the fictional plot in between a group of people. I think that would be an awesome concept. I actually thought we were about to go into that when we started talking about the Buddy Christ. I was waiting for it. I was like, oh yeah, we can do this right now. We're building a whole fictional story about the new version of Christ. You know, Christ 2030. It's like the Family Guy skit. That it's like Chris Tucker and Jesus are like the new Rush Hour. You ever seen that? What I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a good one. It's like Jesus holding a gun. He's like doing like the 80s movie, like typical tropes of like sliding on a car. Oh man. Hilarious concept, phenomenal conversation between the both of us. Honestly, honored to know all of you, and even more so honored to have all you on a format that you could all talk at once. I cannot wait to have more of these, and really, thank you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Thanks. Happy to be back.
Oh yes, and staples of the podcast for sure. And again, Jahmil, we need to do more.
Thank you. This has been great.
We need to do more cross. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hop on. This is awesome. Now, but before we kind of close it all off, final thoughts. What do you want to say to the people? And again, drop again for the people listening on. Drop social medias, websites, whatever you got to do.
Who would like to go?
Oh, good God.
Oh, somebody else go first.
I'll start us off. You can find me Inspired by Jahmil on Instagram, Jahmil Effend author on Facebook. What I'll say is, like I say to everyone, anyone can write, follow your dreams. You really have to put yourself out there if you want to be successful. Don't be concerned with how other people view you, because ultimately their opinion doesn't matter. If you have a story to tell, then share it. People will resonate with you. Even if it's 1, 2, 3 people, it's better than no one. And yeah, chase your dreams. That's where I'll end it.
Like.
Wow. How's anybody supposed to follow that?
I liked it so much. I just gave
That's
it a,
great.
I just
Yeah.
gave it a like.
Jesus. Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. 100% agree. I'm at
Repost.
stevergans.com. That's stevergans.com. And God, I can't top that, so I'll just go in a different direction. Show don't tell is bullshit. Let the flame wars begin. It's on my blog. I explain on my blog. It's bullshit.
Like,
Your turn, Adam.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with you because I'm in the same book because my books are about 80% dialogue.
Hell
So
yeah.
Mine too.
So you've got to tell people. Anyways,
If you're telling us, yeah.
Yeah, if you're telling a story, you're telling, right? You're not showing, you're telling.
Right. If you're telling them a story through interpretive dance, you're showing them. If you're making a painting, you're showing them. If you're using words, you're telling them by the nature of the beast. So it's a ridiculous trope. What they really mean is good writing versus bad writing. But it's in my blog. Read it.
mm.
Damn. Dropping heat right at the podcast ends. Oh my god. Again, this was absolutely phenomenal. Thanks for all my guests. We will be back soon, Mondays and Wednesdays for new episodes. This is the AR's Tale podcast, aka the ART podcast. Thanks again. Peace out.